agent of Olodumare to found the Yoruba race? Or was he someone who migrated from the Middle East and established the original dynasties of the Yoruba people? The conflicting theories of Ife being the cradle of human race and the theory of migration represent different versions of the origin of the Yoruba people. Whereas the theory of the cradle does not allow us to compare other theories of origin of other Nigerian peoples. The theory of migration links up the Yoruba people with several other Nigerian peoples and at least allows the historian to explore this aspect of the search for identity in terms of the myths of origin that links up the Yoruba and other Nigerian peoples.
Oranmiyan was born in Ife to the royal house of Oduduwa, and as a warrior prince, he founded the kingdoms of Benin, the dynasty of Benin, and that of Oyo. And he later came back to Ife and became the 6th Oni. So the Oba of Benin is the son to the Oni of Ife. And even beyond Benin, you find Oba of Ishakiri, who's my grandson. You find the Obi of Onitsha, who is also my grandson, and the Oba of Lagos, a grandson. They are all interrelated, and On is the father here.
Well, it depends on how we look at it. I think it's a historical fact that Prince Oranmiyan came from Ife to establish a dynasty here. It's a long story. And the last king of the first dynasty had a son who was banished from the city and went into the unknown. During the period of the interregnum, and the chief decided to find a solution, the first step was to go and find him, find the banished king, or prince rather. And so the emissaries narrated the purpose of their mission, and they wanted him to come home and take his rightful throne. But by this time, Okwe said no, he wouldn't come. And after a lot of argument, persuasion rather, he then offered to send his son by name Oranmiyan.
This obelisk is known as Oranmiyan's staff. But who was Oranmiyan? Like most figures in mythology, there is considerable controversy as to who he really was. Was he an Ife prince who founded the ruling dynasties both in Benin and in Old Oyo? Or was he a Benin prince who came on exile to Ife and later on returned home to found the ruling dynasty in Benin? It really doesn't matter, because he was probably not just one man, but representative of a whole epoch in history which links up the Yoruba and Edo-speaking peoples. But he certainly stands very high in history, sufficiently high for this obelisk to be his walking stick. the major roads of Benin radiate from Benin Square. And visitors to Benin from the 17th century have always been impressed by the wide and open roads of Benin, and also the general layout of the city. The city was, of course, the center of a major and powerful empire, which is not surprising that various people have claimed connections and descent from Onitsha and beyond to the delta into the coastal regions.
The Kalabari are very clear about their having come from the Benin area. And to mark it, a good percentage of our folklore are based on Oba, the title of the King of Benin.
The tradition stating that the Jaw are derived from Benin are derived from historical contacts and links with the Western Delta. Not necessarily directly with Benin, but with areas in the Delta area of the West over which Benin had influence. For example, there are many traditions which state Benin origin, but when you actually analyze these traditions, that they are actually referring to the Shekiri kingdom of Warri, which of course itself has traditions of origin from Benin, deriving its political institutions from Benin. There are many traditions and oral literature in the Delta which suggests that the influence of Benin, or at least the reputation of Benin as a kingdom, was very strong in the Delta.
Similarly, the monarchy of the famous commercial city of Onitsha is closely linked with Benin. According to tradition, the sprawling city of Onitsha grew from the nucleus of Adonidu, founded by Eze Chima. Ado is the approximate name for Edo, the collective name for the Benin people.
Well, the influence is there. This is a matter of history and what we believe. But we know we have some relationship or connection, having lived somewhere and having integrated. And the original language of the Onitsha, this is not the original language.
Asaba, a major delta city on the western side of the Niger, directly overlooks Onitsha. The Asaba people trace their monarchy not to Benin, but to Nebisi, a prince of Igala, in the Niger-Benue confluence.
It is also said that when Nebisi came here, another person came from Benin and settled here. So that Asaba people are really a mixed people. They have link with Igala, they have link with Igbo land, they have link with Benin.
The Igala were at the center of the crossroads. They speak a language with strong affinities to Yoruba and Igbo. And they continually argue with the northern Igbo, especially at Nri, as to who borrowed more from whom. Their traditions of origin agree on a close relationship between the two peoples.
There was a king of Igala named Achado, Achado, that among his sons was Eri, E-R-I. That Eri was a hunter and a warrior. He migrated to the present Anambra local government area. And from him were descended towns like Anam, Aguleri, Umuleri, Ibariam, Okuzo, Nteje.
The Igala web at this significant crossroad also covers the Nupe, their neighbors to the north. The founder of the Nupe dynasty is Suede. The Suede legend traces the origin of that monarchy to an Igala prince.
When Ata Idoko, who conquered the Jukuns and warded them off from here, was installed as the Ata, he was wounded during the war, and then that wound became very septic, could not be cured here, and then he had to be taken to Nupe country, Unku area, and there he was attended to, but it did not cure the wound, and he was accompanied on that journey by with his son Ayaba. Ayaba accompanied him to Nupe country. When they were there looking for the cure, Ayaba fell in love with a widow in the Nupe area, and then eventually the father died of this septic wound, and the corpse had to be brought home here. So while they were there trying to bring the corpse home, this lady told Ayaba that Ayaba had put her in the family way.
And later on, she gave birth to Edegi, the Swede. It was this Swede who, at the age of about 30, this was around early 15th to 15th century, who went back to Ida as a slave, because at that time, the whole of this area was a tribute to the Ata of Igala, and they were paying tribute, enslaved to Ata. And this boy, who was the son, because by that time this prince had become Ata of Igala, and he went as a slave back to his father's palace. The father, of course, recognized him, took him very close to himself. He was later on to come back here with all sorts of gifts when the father saw that he was going to die, and the other half-brothers of his were becoming very jealous, so the father sent him back to the land of his mother. And it was this Chodi who then came and founded the Nupe kingdom. And that was the beginning of Nupe kingdom.
We are off Lokoja at a point where we can see both the channels bringing the Niger and the Benue to this meeting point. Lokoja itself is dominated by the Pati Mountains, and the Niger drains off the waters of the central plateau to the southwest, and the Benue drains the plateau to the southeast, converging at this point, where the Niger takes all down to join the creeks and the delta and the lagoon systems of the southern coast. It is quite clear that we are at a most strategic center of the geographical configuration of this country. It is not surprising that around here, major ethnic and linguistic groups of Nigeria are bought at this point. The Nupe, the Igala, the Igbo, the Yoruba, the Edo, and so on. Many groups trace their origins to areas around the confluence. And in fact, the confluence may be regarded as it were, a major dispersal point of Nigerian peoples and linguistic groups.
It appears as if some 5,000 years ago, perhaps earlier, even the ancestors of not just the modern Yoruba, the modern Edo, the Igbo, the Idoma, the Igala, the Nupe, Ibira, the Niger Kaduna family of languages, as we call them, had their own ancestral language spoken around the Confluence area.
There are today over 300 languages in Nigeria, all mutually unintelligible. This has often resulted in seemingly irreconcilable positions perceived even by Nigerians themselves. Yet, in seeking to define their relationships with their neighbors, Nigerian groups reveal extensive linkages and intergroup relations and interactions that existed long before the arrival of the British. Nigerian art enjoys worldwide acclaim. Few will deny the high quality and variety of the heritage of Nigerian arts and crafts. Our ethnic diversity has no doubt given rise to the different art styles. Yet, a closer look seems to suggest a common philosophical and psychological basis that points to shared roots.
The dyeing pits of Kano are famous not only as centers for the export of cloth to distant places, both within and outside Nigeria, but also as important center for the development of textile technology, which also are widespread in Nigeria. And textile technology, whether here or at Akwete or in the Yoruba country, do remind us of another unifying factor in evolving culture in Nigeria.
A survey of the techniques and technology of weaving among different Nigerian communities can tell us something about the underlying unity and diversity in the culture of Nigerian peoples. The two types of looms for weaving are a case in point. The horizontal loom, used by male weavers, is spread right across the land among the Hausa, Tiv, Yoruba, and other Nigerian groups. The vertical loom, lowered so that the weaver can sit on the floor with feet in a shallow pit, is confined to women. It can be raised so that the weaver can sit on a stool. Women weavers using the vertical loom are to be found among many Yoruba, Igbo, Igala, Idoma, and other groups. Today, women weavers are best organized in Akwete in Igbo land, where they operate in cooperative societies. The technology of dyeing the thread in various colors was also widespread before the competition from imported dyes and colored threads. The technology of dyeing encouraged the making of earthen pots. Pots were made in different sizes and used for various purposes. Some pots were basically utilitarian, others were simply decorative, yet others were for ritual and other religious purposes. The variety of clay types dictated by different ecological environments led to a variety of styles and techniques. The antiquity of clay technology can be traced back to the famous terracotta of Nok, the center of the oldest civilization known in Nigerian history.
Until the accidental find of terracotta figurines on Jos Plateau while mining for tin in 1928, and further discoveries of similar terracotta figurines over a very wide area of the plateau and south of the plateau, down to the Benue Valley and Katsina Ala and so on, figurines which we now associate with the name of Nok. This village was relatively unknown. Since these various finds, of course, the Nok cultural area has become one of the most ancient terracotta cultural areas in the world and one of the widest in extent. It is therefore not surprising that the village celebrates this ascendancy into fame by holding annual festivals of Nok culture and has only recently erected this figure at the entrance to the village.
The figurines of Nok are examples not just of ancient Nigerian clay technology. They are impressive works of art in their own right. Despite geographical distance, many characteristic features of Nok figures seem to have informed several of the artistic forms that were to be found in later works at Igbo Ukwu, Ife, and Benin in the south. Following basically the Nok tradition, Igbo Ukwu transformed the technology of terracotta to bronze.
This looks like any compound in the village. And yet, before the accidental finds of what we now know internationally as Igbo Ukwu art treasures, we used to believe that Igbo history was of limited duration because the Igbo were decentralized peoples and the oral traditions did not go remarkably far behind. But with the treasures that were discovered in digging for wells in this compound and in adjacent compounds, it has been possible to trace Igbo history back to at least before 1000 AD, which has been a remarkable development in Nigerian history.
The Igbo Ukwu artifacts were of such sophistication that archaeologists who first studied them doubted if they were indigenous to the area.
When the Igbo Ukwu bronze objects were first excavated, the first thing that occurred to the excavators was that it must be from Egypt. This is what we call the Hermetic origin. It must be from the north, outside Nigeria. Okay, but further analysis shows clearly that the bronze objects themselves must have developed either in Igbo land or in central Nigeria, where it migrated into Igbo land. And then when it reached Igbo land, it took a different future because it contains high percentage of lead. And we know that lead is obtainable in Abakaliki, copper is obtainable in Abakaliki, and tin is obtainable in northern Nigeria, and of course in Calabar area. Investigation have shown now that these materials could be got locally. And therefore, of course, we have to think that it must have its origin somewhere nearby. And central Abuja area, that is the present Abuja area into Nok, could have been the center for the diffusion.
Almost 1,000 years after Nok, and some 3 or 4 centuries after Igbo Ukwu came Ife. Again, the features of the terracotta of Nok and the bronzes of Igbo Ukwu seem to be reflected in the artworks of ancient Ife. Unlike clay, not much wood carving has survived from the distant past. But we can say that the wood carvings that dominate sculpture today, especially in Benin, reflect the great traditions of the past. On the other hand, today's bronze sculptures can be described generally as shadows of the past, with only the occasional masterpiece.
Ancient Benin
has unearthed by far the most numerous and the best-known bronze works in Africa. Both Benin and Ife relate in their naturalistic styles, with a few differences in detail. It has been suggested that while Benin was imaginative art, the artists who produced the Ife heads seem to have had particular individuals in mind. I'm sitting in the innermost room of Benin Museum, which houses this reconstruction of two of the most sacred shrines in the royal palace of old Benin. They contain some of the great masterpieces of Benin art. These, along with other masterpieces of Nigerian art treasures, are very well known throughout the world. What we need to emphasize is that these masterpieces, which were made possible by royal patronage, must have been sustained because of the prevalence and the wide distribution of art and craft throughout the whole society. And secondly, though we often stress the diversity and the richness of Nigerian art treasures, we need also to stress that the great art traditions of Nigeria were not isolated. That's because of similarities of style and the use of particular motifs, we can trace links between Nok and Igbo Ukwu, between Igbo Ukwu and Ife, between Ife and Benin, perhaps even with intermediate stages such as Owo, between Ife and Benin, and also other intermediate stages that are yet to be discovered. The question has often been raised concerning the time gaps between these ancient cultures. Recent archaeological finds at Owo, a town situated between Ife and Benin, have helped to some extent to bridge the gap between Ife and Benin art tradition.